We finally got all of our All-Star Game content throughout the weekend. We have 46 cards from All-Star Game related content to go through in tier list today. This tier list today will be just the new content. It all just dropped, so these are all my initial thoughts after looking at the attributes and using them for only a few hours. I was in LA throughout the weekend. If you saw my last video, you saw I record that in my hotel. We're back here and I'm only getting to play the game now. So even though it is Wednesday, this is another episode of Tier List Tuesday. Let's get into it. So I want to keep in mind, first of all, I'm not going to include 99 David Ortiz in this tier list. This card is a top tier first baseman, like easy S+ tier first baseman. He's essentially a lefty Frank Thomas. Great first base option if you're still looking for one to use. However, he's separate from the All-Star Game content. We got our new All-Star Game program as well with the new Jason Dominguez, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and then the new Miguel Cabrera today. So other than the Home Run Derby and All-Star Game packs that we got, this is all that we got to go through. 46 cards, I think it all adds up to. So I have them all on one singular tier list here today. We're going to go through all the cards and give my thoughts on how good they are. Also, let me know in the comments how you feel about the content that we got. Let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback because next Tuesday, we will be doing the overall cumulative tier list again, including all the content that we got. I'll actually have experimented with a lot of the cards at that point. So here is our tier list. Just to review the tiers and how this tier list works. These are all different tiers based on how good I think cards are. S+ tier are the ones I am personally using and are amongst the S tier in terms of really good cards to use. D tier are really the ones you want to put on the back end of your priority list. However, in terms of this content, these All-Star Game cards are high enough overall and bring enough attributes to the table where they are more than viable cards to use on your teams. Just the only thing is that when you compare them to each other, there are easily some cards that are a step above the rest. I know you guys see the Home Run Derby and All-Star Game cards first. However, I want to wait on those and quickly go through our program cards. Joe Mantiply, I'm going to put him in the A tier because he's viable as a lefty reliever. However, his pitch mix is not the best. I have a tough time recommending a pitcher with that pitch mix. However, viable lefty relievers are not very common, so I'll put him in the A tier. Same with CJ Cron. Like, A gives me the vibe that, you know, your card is viable and you could definitely like get away with using his card in comparison to other cards, and you don't have many weaknesses. However, you know, they aren't elite like some of the cards that we have in the program here. So CJ Cron is a perfect example of that. Tony Gonslin, I think I'm going to put in C or D. I'm going to put in the D tier, only because his pitch mix is very difficult to pitch with. I really think a lot of people are going to struggle pitching with him. However, if you need a starter, he's definitely okay to use. Manny Machado, I'm going to put right in the A tier as well. At least he's a third baseman to get some additional versatility. His power versus righty, though, a little sad about that. Carlos Rodon, I'm going to put him in the C tier. He's just a smidgen above Tony Gonsolin because at least he's a lefty. Wilson Contreras, I'm putting in S tier. Very, very viable catcher at his current point in the game. Very good versus lefties. Luis Castillo is definitely on the border of A and S. I'm going to put him in the top of A. Only because he has 4 pitches and some people may not love that. But this card is going to be a little bit of an underrated starter with his control and break that he has. Corbin Burns, easily S+ tier. This is definitely a must-try card in the program. Outlier sinker. Good sinker cutter pitch mix. Definitely a viable card to use on your rotation if you're looking for some more pitching help. David Bedner, we're going to put below Joe Mantiply because he's like Joe Mantiply with a pitch mix. Thing is, he's a righty and there are a lot of good righty relievers. I'm going to put him, honestly, we'll put him in the C tier. He gets a little bit more viability if you need some more bullpen depth, but he's not going to be an incredible reliever, I don't think. Paul Goldschmidt, I'm putting him in the S tier because he's definitely a great first base option. The contact will play. I know his power is a smidgen low versus righties, I think it is, but his bat is really good. And, you know, a lot of people use Paul Goldschmidt's live series card as a bench bat and all that, so I like this card as an all-star game card. Dansby, easily S+ tier. The shortstops with well-rounded hitting, fielding, and speed are always valuable. This card gives me big Trey Turner vibes from last year. Sandy, another S+ tier card right next to Corbin Burns, is like must-try starting pitcher guys if you're looking for more starting pitcher help. Edwin Diaz, he's definitely right in the border of A and B. I put him B, actually, mainly because as a righty, it's only 3 pitches, and 2 of them being fastballs. He might be tough for some people to pitch with. However, the high velocity should play. You'll be able to spam the sliders as well. He's definitely a good reliever to use. Bryce Harper, I'm going to put in S. I'll put him in the S tier. Definitely a good corner outfielder because he's got well-rounded contact versus both sides and good enough speed and defense to play out there. Juan Soto, I'm going to put him in the top of A, only because his contact versus left, I think it is a little bit low. It's tough, and his defense isn't enough in the corner. Again, like, our A tier cards are definitely startable cards. I would recommend Harper over Soto just a little bit more, mainly because of the contact being more well-rounded. He's not going to have much of a matchup disadvantage. Soto will have a little bit of a disadvantage versus left. Verlander, I'm going to put in the B tier. I think he's just a smidgen worse than someone like Castillo because he doesn't bring enough velocity to the table. He doesn't have the ideal pitch mix. But again, he could be a good starter to use. I would rather use him over Rodon and Gonslin. Shohei, I'm going to put in the A tier. Could be a respectable starter. It all depends on how you hit with him. If you hit really well with this card, if you're playing on like all-star difficulty, he could be elite. But a lot of people, I have a feeling, won't hit well with him, especially on Hall of Fame. But a very fun card nonetheless. Paul Blackburn, I think, is actually a very respectable starter. I'm going to put him in the A tier as well. I think there's a lot of A tier cards, a lot of cards in this program that are definitely like solid cards to use, but not many that seem like must-use material. And I would say Blackburn, if you need some rotation help, could be very viable sinker cutter boy. Julio, his card is definitely an S tier. Just the defense, the good hitting attributes. This defense is especially valued when you have a really slow corner outfielder. You compare him to his home run derby card, which we'll talk about in a moment. At least this one will be better in the field along with that really good speed. So I think there is value in that. Martin Perez, I'll put right next to Paul Blackburn as an underrated starter option. You need some depth, could be a nice lefty to use. Andres Jimenez, honestly, is also respectable for a second baseman. I'm going to put him in the A tier. A lot of A tier cards. It's just, again, lefty, a little weak versus lefties, but, you know, a dope hitter for a middle infield option with a respectable defense. Tim Anderson, I've actually heard some people feel some love on him. 67 power, whatever he has versus right, is definitely on the risk of being too low. Something that's noteworthy because if you have that low of power, you might hit some deep flyouts, lazy lineouts with them, which is something to note, especially when a guy like Dansby exists. You know, it might be problematic, but I'll put him right next to Andres Jimenez. Actually, no, we'll put him in S. Mainly because that contact versus both sides is definitely very valuable. Gregory Soto, definitely S+ in terms of a lefty reliever with a high velocity. Very valuable to have on your team. Really good velocity and, you know, good attributes on it. So I like this card a ton as like a really good card to use in your pen. Benintendi, I don't think it's actually a bad card. Good contact versus both sides. It's a little bit low on the power, which would kind of be a turnoff for many. So I'm going to put him in B. And now that I look at it, I'm going to move Crone down to B as well. Just looking at the bunch of cards in the A tier. At least the A tier pretty well-rounded on their contact and power. At least a little bit more so. Benny being a little bit low on the power is worrisome. But he should be still a respectable card like Crone. Luis Arias, I got to put him in the F tier. Like, he's not a bad card, but I wish they did his contact versus lefty, a little bit better. Like, he's a good hitter. I don't know, just doesn't bring enough bat to the table. He's definitely more valuable as like a second baseman. Jorge Lopez, definitely an S tier reliever. You know, having a good outlier sinker reliever is always good to have in your pen. If you like the monthly award one, definitely get this one. He should be a very serviceable reliever in your pen. Definitely worth scooping up on your team over some of our other relievers like Bedner. JD Martinez actually is a solid bench bat, and his defense isn't the worst in the corner outfield. So, you know, I'm going to put him in the A tier because his bat is actually pretty solid. And that's a bat actually worth using at least on your bench. Aaron Judge, I'm going to put in S. Some people may call it biased, but I think the bat, the power he brings is very good. At least if you're going to compare him to like Juan Soto, at least Judge's defense is better. So even though he does have the slightly worse contact versus the one side, at least it's in the reverse split. So it's only versus lefties. And at least he has the matchup advantage there. And with Judge, at least he has better defense. So if you're going to play him in left or right, he'll actually make more plays than that Soto will. Shane McClanahan seems nothing like more than a mid starter. Now, I'd put him in the Verlander level. Like, you could definitely get away with using him, but I don't think he's going to be any sort of incredible as a starting pitcher. Some people could probably pitch well with him, but I don't picture his card really being lights out at all. Alejandro Kirk, putting him in the S tier right next to Wilson Contreras. Just decide which one you want based on, you know, the type of player you are. Do you like a well-rounded catcher who's good versus both sides? Do you feel like you face a lot of lefties and want someone like Wilson Contreras? One of those two will be a good catcher solution for you, dependent on what you need. Because at this point in the game, you know, there are some good catchers like Napoli, Mauer. It all comes down to what type of card you like. And both those two, being good hitters at such a not deep position, worth a try. All right, so those are all of our main program cards. We have the All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, and then our new content that dropped today. So these are Miggy's attributes if you are just seeing him for the first time. Good contact versus both sides, respectable power. The bat should be solid, and the defense isn't going to be great, but, you know, good enough. Thing is, 15 speed is very slow. He's going to essentially only hit singles or occasional doubles in, like, really big stadiums. But I don't know. I don't love this card. In terms of first baseman, he's not incredible. So I have a tough time really putting this card too high on the list. I'll put him in the A tier, because at least he's a viable one with well-rounded hitting attributes that you could definitely get away with starting. Jason Dominguez, if you haven't seen his card. He has a Topps Now All-Star Game card, I should say Future Game card. Switch hitter, good versus both sides, good fielding and speed. This is a very cool card. He's not incredible at anything, but a well-rounded center fielder option, and especially if you're rocking someone who is like a Stanton or someone in the corner outfield, having 90 speed in center is valuable to make those plays in the gap, and Jason Dominguez should be pretty good at that. And again, switch hitting is always nice, so I think this is a nice switch hitter. I'm going to put him in S tier. He's definitely a top of the S tier type outfielder because the switch hitting, defense, and speed combination, that's always good to have. So now that we went through those cards, we have the big bunch, Home Run Derby and All-Star Game cards. So a lot of people are very critical on these pieces of content and all that. So let's go through it all and give my thoughts. Let's start off base up to the rare round. So in terms of the Home Run Derby, a lot of the base round cards are actually pretty good. The thing is, all the base round cards are sacrificing defense usually, and it all depends on which position they play. Like, can you get away with the bad defense? So starting off with Corey Seeger, actually could be a great second base or third base option. His defense is bad, but having a hitter with that level of power, also as many quirks as Corey Seeger gets in a middle infield position, is actually really good card to use. So I'm going to put him in the S+. Ronald Acuna Jr., at least he has speed to make up for his, you know, slightly and defense. So I'm going to put him in the S tier. However, you know, his card, at least with the base hitting attributes, fielding, and all that, is definitely comparable to Aaron Judge's card, because Judge does have good power versus both sides, just that Judge actually has better contact versus one side. So I'm going to put those two right next to each other. I will say Acuna's card should still mash. Just 47 vision on his card is very low, and you know, that could be sometimes a problem for people if you're playing on Hall of Fame and Legend. Jose Ramirez actually is a pretty well-rounded card, and the switch hitting is nice. Having a switch hitter that level of power is dope, and I would put him right next to like Corey Seager and being a very valuable middle infield option, because there aren't many players who play those positions with this level of power. So Kyle Schwarber, I think, gets a little bit of a bump down. Like, he is a good hitter, and his card is gonna rake. Thing is, you're playing 62 fielding and 47 speed in the corner outfield. That's the level of low defense and speed where like the hitting has to be incredible to warrant. And I don't know if the contact is enough on this card to warrant. So I'm going to put in the top of A tier. Albert Pujols is a perfect one to have at first base. I'm going to put him in the S tier. Good first base option. He's actually got respectable contact too. And 120 power versus both sides is really good. Like, there aren't many first basemen with that level of power versus both sides. See, this is a great bench bat with the pinch hitter quirk he gets. It's sad he doesn't get any other live series quirks though. Just keep in mind, 0 speed is going to tick this card down a bit. He's essentially going to hit singles and homers, and that's it. Pete Alonso, Ozzy, is a little bit more viable than Pujols. He does have the good power versus both sides. He's a little bit, you know, of a slightly worse defender, but at first base, you can get away with it. And at least he has speed to get some more extra base hits out of you. And again, he'll have some quirks that'll make this card play a little bit above the 94 and 90 contact. So if you're playing on all-star difficulty, these home run derby cards are great options to use in your team where that contact really won't be a problem in the slightest. And then we got to talk about the rare round guys. Julio Rodriguez, easily an S+, one of the best cards of the content drop. His defense in center field is going to be 64. However, 98 speed will allow him to make up for some bad reactions. You'll find some plays in the gap with the bad jumps anyway, because of the man's speed. Thing is, I do think the defense is somewhat a problem, and it's something you have to take note of, because he will likely botch some plays. Like that low level of fielding, he might miss some routine fly balls just because of bad jumps and all that. However, with 102 and 103 contact and the 124 power, that is elite. Juan Soto is also really good, especially in left or right field. I would keep it in right field with the silver fielding. You could definitely get away with him out there. Keep in mind, lower arm strength is somewhat a problem. But with how good of a hitter this card is, and again, he gets a ton of quirks on Juan Soto cards. Great card to pick up as a corner outfield option. Him or Julio are some of the best content we got this entire weekend. He's a great card to use. Now we go to our All-Star Game cards, and these cards are definitely a little bit more underwhelming just because they're essentially just slightly boosted live series cards. We got Clayton Kershaw, who is probably B tier. I mean, he's got at least, solid control on his stuff, but I have a tough time recommending this card. His 4 pitches are kind of weird. He's got a primary slider. Put him in the middle of it. I'm putting him C tier, actually. Emmanuel Clase should be a good reliever. He's got good hits per 9, solid Ks per 9. He's a respectable reliever. However, he's not going to be lights out dependent on how you pitch with him. Anyone that hits high velo will hit Clase. So I'm going to put him in the A tier. Valuable to have in your pen. I'm going to try him there. Thing is, I'm not expecting him to be incredible. The outlier cutter is good, but when you have 2 fastballs the same speed, he's essentially a 2-pitch pitcher. Then we got the new Byron Buxton, who I'm going to put in the top of A. And the only reason this card is not incredible is he's got 73 and 82 contact. However, you're playing on all-star difficulty and you're running someone like Soto in a corner outfield, please try Buxton in center. The fielding and speed is incredible, and that combination with the power, it's going to be great on all-star difficulty with the PCIs being as big as they are. I am going to try him on Hall of Fame and see how he is, see if his quirks salvage some of that contact, but they clearly attacked the contact on his card to keep him from being like a super overpowered card. However, he's definitely a very, very viable card. Next, we have Ryan Helsley, who I'm going to put right next to Clase. Could be a viable reliever, but it all comes down to how you pitch with them. The hits and Ks per 9 are top tier, and he's got the outlier fastball. I just don't know how I feel about his pitch mix. I don't know how I'm going to pitch with his mix of pitches. I haven't used his cards much, but definitely a viable reliever to use in some bullpens. Definitely, the high velocity has the potential to be a really good end of the game reliever for you. Alec Manoa, I think I got to put him in the A tier, man. The only reason is because of the pitch mix. This card is actually good. He's got pretty good control on the pitches and pretty good break, especially on the slider. But I don't think he brings enough on the attributes front to really warrant using him. Definitely a respectable, viable starter. But is he going to be really incredible, as good as, Burns and Alcantara? I don't think so. I'd be shocked if he was really close to those guys. Thing is, he's not worth that price point he is right now at 96K. And this might be the most controversial of all of the takes. 99 Stanton. He's in the S+ tier. He is just as good as Juan Soto in my eyes. Listen, I know that people see the speed in the defense. A lot of people saw this card and they were like, you know what? Not even going to bother using it, not make my team, but I get it. The defense is going to be a slight problem with 32 speed. Any bad jump that he gets is going to be very impossible for him to get. You probably need to consider using a really good defensive center fielder to use him. But just from my experience with these cards, with how good of a hitter Stanton is, he's got 111 and 103 contact, 125 and 110 power, 77 vision. The hitting on this card should be incredible. Some people might not like the tall hitters, but if you hit very well with someone like Stanton, which I know I do, he is definitely a top tier card to use in the game despite the defense. I used Yordan Alvarez in my outfield for a bit, and with how good he hit, he was worth the start. Castellanos, David Justice. There is the risk reward of these slow defensive outfielders, and I truly think if you can hit really well with Stanton, that's worth it. I wouldn't entirely discount him only because of the defense. I get why people are saying what they have about him. Have Stanton be a top 1, 2, or 3 hitter in your lineup. That defense is worth it. That's a very controversial take apparently, but for me to say that he's not S+ tier, not something that I would be using, but say someone like Soto is, doesn't feel 100% right. Because the only difference is 15 speed or whatever it is between those two. So yeah, there's the entire tier list. All of the All-Star Game Home Run Derby cards ranked head to head. If you see all these cards and are looking for the ones you should be picking in your packs and trying on your team right away, I would really recommend the S+ and S tiers. Use the A tiers if you need some more depth on your team or really like the players. Honestly, any of these cards you can use and likely do well with. If you're really trying to build the best of the best team, I would really consider your S and S+ tiers the most. I appreciate you all watching this video. The tier list Tuesdays are always fun. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I know some people are going to disagree with me on Stanton. I'm speaking from my experiences and how I play the game. And the beauty of this game is that there may be cards that you don't like that I may love. And that's just the beauty of the game, man. I appreciate you all watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this tier list Tuesday on a Wednesday. I'll see you all again on a bunch of videos later this week where you get to debut and try all of these cards and see how we do. You all have a great rest of your day. I'll see you on the streams later tonight. Deuces.